Joe Biden, it kind of slipped up during an interview with Al Roker that he does intend to run for 2024. Now, he has not made a public announcement that was planned, so to speak, but during this on the ground interview, that did come out, and it made me think about some things. It made me think about the fact that the polls don't support that. The majority of Democrat voters do not want Joe Biden to run again. Then you also have the fact that you have Marianne Williamson, who's entered this race. We've talked enough about that. I'm not going to talk about that again. I'm sorry. But then we have RFK Jr., who recently has technically didn't formally announce, but the cat got out the bag because the FEC posted that he already filed the paperwork, and then it went from there, and it spread like wildfire. But we're going to make a comparison here. Now, RFK Jr. is running through the Democratic Party, and that is one piece where I would push back. I would tell him to run as an independent or as a third party candidate, but he's running through the Democratic Party, and he is really someone that I can see if I'm thinking about some like his positions on things. He's against the authoritarian state. He was against the mandates, right? He criticizes the government, these government agencies. He is someone that I could see having crossover appeal. I could see him winning independence. I could actually see some people on the right choosing to vote for him. And I've actually had people already tell me that. But what do you guys think? Would you vote for him? That's the poll. Would you vote for him as a Democrat? Or would you only vote for him if he runs third party or independent? Or I believe the other option was no, regardless. And then the last one was, dude, I don't know. Let's get into Biden's slip of the tongue here, where he lets people know that he is running again. And then there's a panel here, and I want you to hear what they're saying about Joe Biden, because this is funny to me. This is comical at best. Let's get into this.
Are you saying that you would be taking part in our upcoming election in 2024?
Well, I'll either be rolling an egg or being the guy who's pushing them out.
Come on, help a brother out. Make some news for me.
I plan on running Al, but we're not prepared to announce it yet.
Welcome back.
But he did. In a way, he did.
That was President Biden talking about his 2024 plans to our new chief White House correspondent, Al Roker, this morning at the White House ahead of the annual Easter egg roll. Al did an incredible job. That answer essentially confirms NBC's latest reporting that the final touches are being put on the president's reelection operation. But with no expected primary challenger and the oxygen on the Republican side being sucked up by former President Trump's legal issues, there's really little urgency at the White House to set a launch date. Top Biden ally Congressman Jim Clyburn tells NBC, quote, the longer Biden can go without being an announced candidate, the better off he is.
What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? The statement here from Jim Clyburn, the longer he waits, the better off he is. That tells you just how weak Joe Biden is as a candidate and how other Democrats, establishment Democrats, are trying to help him. They are really trying to lift Joe Biden up and help him stand. They're really trying. They're really trying here. You should not have to work that hard to help someone if they are a viable candidate. They should be able to speak on their own, and they should be able to be their own champion. But everybody is coming in and they're trying to prop Joe Biden up because they know he is incredibly weak. And even to the point where Clyburn would make a statement like this, oh, let's let him wait longer because it'll be better for him. That's embarrassing. It is embarrassing for this country that we all know just how weak Joe Biden is. We know that Joe Biden is experiencing some type of cognitive decline. It is apparent. And they are still trying to push Crime Bill Joe. Embarrassing.
Joining me now on set is Nicholas Wu, congressional reporter for Politico, Democratic strategist and NBC News political analyst Juanita Tolliver, and Sarah Chamberlain, president and CEO of the Republican Main Street Partnership. Thank you so much to all of you for being here to start us off on this very busy Monday. Nicholas, let me start with you. First of all, what did you make of the president's comments there? It sounds like he's made up his mind, but we know he's not in a rush. He doesn't really need to be, right?
Well, I got some news out of the Easter egg roll.
Yeah.
But I think
the best days.
Exactly. But I think the interesting thing here is quite how much Biden really is biding his time before announcing his reelection. I mean, right now, he can just sit back and do the work of governing while, there are all these negative headlines about Trump in the news, his legal woes, and, all the other Republicans duking it out. Whereas, Biden, at the end of the day, he's the incumbent, right? Like, yes, there are certain fundraising deadlines that he'll need to deal with if he wants to run if it makes it official for reelection. But, he can still draw on an incredibly large network and all the advantages of incumbency.
Juanita.
Let's talk about something that he just mentioned here that I think is important. Notice he said, number one, Joe Biden is the incumbent. So in his mind, he doesn't need to try as hard. How'd that work out for George H.W. Bush? He was the incumbent too. I don't think he felt that he needed to try that hard. Bill Clinton came in and won, right? How'd that work out for Donald Trump in 2020? He was also the incumbent. Biden came in and won, right? Just because you are the incumbent doesn't mean you shouldn't have to try. You're not guaranteed a second term. So that's something that we really need to think about here. That's actually a big mistake. If you just think you can just sit back and not really try because you know that you're a shoo-in. The second thing that he pointed out, this piece about Trump's legal issues. He is letting you know, he's saying the quiet part out loud, he's letting you know that, again, because Americans are so focused on Trump's legal issues, they're not focused on what Joe Biden is not doing. Let's be very clear about this. The more Trump is in the news about his legal issues, the less likely people are going to be focused on Joe Biden not getting results. And that is on purpose. Let's go on.
A source close to the president said that one reason he's holding off on announcing is to, quote, preserve the option not to run. Do you think that makes Democrats a little nervous?
No, I'm just going to roll my eyes at that. Let's be real. Biden is building his 2024 campaign team. Honestly, I thought the soft launch of his campaign was the State of the Union back in February. We heard the phrase, finish the job. That's what he intends to do. So I'm just going to dismiss that. I'm not nervous by it. But what I do think is that
you have to be wary of the opinion of the individuals that they bring on these panels. This is why I wanted to show this. Notice her title said Democrat Party strategist. So of course she is going to have a favorable opinion of Joe Biden. They don't bring on people that aren't already a part of some type of organization or some type of group that is going to continue the narrative that they want to have pushed out. That's important for people to understand. Even when you see these town halls and they pretend to call on a random person in the audience, those people are not random. Those people are already chosen. I've been to town halls. I know how it works. Those people are already chosen. They've already submitted their questions ahead of time. It looks to the viewers, it looks like it's random and they're picking a random person, but they're not. Those questions have already been pre-selected, and those are the people that they call on.
he is enjoying the luxury of being a strong incumbent, as Nick said, right? Like, he's going out talking about all the things he's achieved legislatively, all the businesses or all the investments he's making in communities across the country.
Nope, you had it right the first time. She said all the businesses, and then she said all the investments. No, you had it right the first time. Focusing on business, all the business he's done. She had it right the first time.
Country. He's sending out his cabinet to do the same. And so they're going to keep doing that for as long as they
You're
can.
right. It's such a soft launch. Sarah, what do you make of this? And from Republicans' perspective, you have former President Trump really sucking up all of the oxygen. There's really no urgency for Ron DeSantis to get in, or even former Vice President Pence right now.
I think you're going to see everything get pushed back closer to the summertime, which usually doesn't happen. And
look at her title. President and CEO, Republican Main Street Partnership. These are the people that they bring on.
Biden does have the luxury of time, though I'm not sure the Democrats really want him. All the latest polling, it's like 50%. So it's going to be an interesting time, but I think you're going to see people jumping in June to July.
Yeah, this week is so interesting. I think we actually have that polling that you're talking about. Let's look at that. The idea that Democrats are just not that enthusiastic about a second Biden run.
And they're still trying to push him. Still, let me take the captions off so we can look at this poll. Democratic voters, Dems should nominate Joe Biden 44%. And I'd argue, I don't even think it's that high. I don't think it's that high. Remember, they're not polling people like me. I don't have a landline. I think it's less than that. Another candidate, 54%. So the majority of the people that they did poll do not want Joe Biden. And the Democratic Party is still trying to prop him up and convince the American people that you need to support him again. If people have to be convinced this hard, it is not worth it.
54%, Nicholas, say they want to see another candidate. I mean, is he going to be getting off to a weak start no matter when he announces?
Well, from every Democrat I've talked to, the consensus is that, yes, maybe another person could be better at some point. But right now, there is no other choice other than, say, relatively fringe candidates like Marianne Williamson, right?
Let's pause here for a second. I hope you guys see what he just did there. Let's hear that part again. Pay attention to the vocabulary that he uses. This part is important.
Democrat I've talked to, the consensus is that, yes, maybe another person could be better at some point. But right now, there is no other choice other than, say, relatively fringe candidates like Marianne Williamson. Right?
Two things. First, he says there is no other choice. Okay. So that right there puts doubt in people's mind. Well, there's no one else. Got to vote for Joe. Then he says, I think he catches himself here. Then he says, other than fringe candidates like Marianne Williamson. Pay attention to the vocabulary. Fringe, no other choice. Choice and fringe. So let's think about something here for a second. I don't support Marianne's race. We all know this is not a secret, obviously. I don't support people running through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I don't support this two-party system. But why is the person challenging Joe Biden, why is that considered to be a fringe candidate? What's fringe? Did you also notice he didn't mention RFK Jr.? This is recent. This video, this Meet the Press episode, this is recent. When I was searching for stories, when was this? Today's Tuesday. It was Monday. That was yesterday. I chose the story. This video is pretty new. Pretty new. Notice they didn't mention him. Fringe is the word. So that right there, he just put doubt in Democrat voters' mind twice. No choice and fringe. And that's how they get people to continue to support people like Joe Biden.
Right. Democrats see Biden as the incumbent, and if he officially declares, they will unite behind him. That's just kind of the way it is right now.
It's interesting. Chuck made a point that this week could be a consequential one in the 2024 race because, or last week, I should say, you had former President Trump's indictment. You had the two dueling rulings on abortion in Texas and Washington state. And then you have the two lawmakers who were expelled in Tennessee. Juanita, do you think it's overstated to say that this past week could be pivotal?
Let's be real.
Here comes the fear mongering. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, look what's happening across the country. If you don't vote for him, look at what happened to those lawmakers, those politicians in Tennessee who were pushed out by the GOP. Look at what's happening with Trump's business dealings and his legal issues. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, look at what could happen to you and the rest of the country. And if Joe Biden does win again, I'm telling you, it will be based for the most part out of fear. Out of fear. This is the same thing that happened for a lot of people in 2020. Because let's be real, I didn't see any Biden signs in people's yards. And I live in Massachusetts. I saw Bernie Sanders signs, lots of them. I saw Pete Buttigieg signs for some random reason. A couple Elizabeth Warren signs, and she's from here. Okay? But for the most part, it was fear. People were afraid. Oh, God, we don't want to have Trump again, so I'm going to go vote for Joe Biden. It's not like that many people liked Joe Biden. And this is the point it's come to in this country where people are basing their votes more so on fear instead of what am I getting from the person that I'm voting for? Those days are long gone. Maybe so much more in local politics, you'll see that some. But when it comes to the president of the United States, it's the fear-mongering tactic has been going on for quite a while, actually. Quite a while.
Well, this past week drained me. Me too. News, but it is showing the impact of inflection points. It's showing that younger voices are standing up and being active in ways that I think older generations aren't prepared for, thus the expulsion of 2 Black people out of Tennessee State House. It shows that the public is more in tune and supportive of these charges against Trump. I think that number even went up by 5 points in the last 7 days of people believing he took illegal action. It also shows that people want people to fight for their rights in these abortion rulings with mifepristone. And so when Biden is on the right side of that and Republicans across the country are repeatedly trying to enforce more and more bans, that's going to make it explicitly clear, just like it did in Wisconsin, where Janet Protasevich won by 11 points in a state that Biden only won by less than 1 point in 2020.
That was a big turnout for down in Madison.
Yeah, I want to talk about the abortion issue and the Tennessee issue. I want to play you what Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez had to say and then get your reaction on the others.
Abortion's going to be a big one, right? Now, let's remember who overturned it. It was the Supreme Court, which is more so conservative leaning now. And let's also remember that the Democratic Party had decades to codify Roe v. Wade into law. When Roe v. Wade was passed by the Supreme Court, at that point in time, that was a conservative leaning Supreme Court. This is how things have changed. Democrats that have been in power since never took that next step to put the nail in the coffin to codify it into law. Obama promised to do that, didn't do it. He said it would be the first thing that he would do, chose not to do it, said, well, we can't do it because of Lieberman. You know, I want to show you how this trend continues with the rotating villain. We couldn't do it because of Lieberman. You hear Biden say, oh, we can't do it because of Manchin and Sinema. This has been an issue for a long time. Or we can't do it because of the Senate parliamentarian. If you have issues with the Senate parliamentarian, you can replace the Senate parliamentarian. You know who did that? George W. Bush did that. Didn't like the Senate parliamentarian, said time to go. Democrats can do the same thing if they really wanted to, if they really dislike what the Senate parliamentarian was doing. But I want you to hear this because I'm telling you, it's going to be abortion. They're going to push that and say they're going to take our rights away. They already took your rights are already taken away. So there's that. It's going to be abortion. There's going to be some type of call in reference to, I know they'll try to do this one, in reference to the mandates issue. They'll go on that, even though I think people have different opinions about that, you know. Or they'll go on the racial issue about the gerrymandering, and they'll just keep pushing those same issues. You see, as long as the Democratic Party, when they were in power and they had the position to do so, and they chose not to codify Roe v. Wade into law, that actually continues to help them win. Because if they were to do that, which they could have done that when Joe Biden took office back in 2021, if they codified Roe v. Wade into law, then they have to find another issue that already divides the people to use as some type of fear mongering to get them to come out and vote for them again. This piece is important. The other piece they're going to use is the canceling of student loan debt, even though we know that has not gone through. Mark my words. That's how they're going to get people to come out again. Listen to this piece about the abortion issue.
I think it's important that we take care of women, and it's important that we have real discussions on women's health care and get off the abortion, get off the abortion conversation. Women have a whole lot more other issues than just abortion. Let's have those real conversations, and let's talk about the other things that are happening in this world.
Sarah, what do you make of that strategy? Clearly, what you are seeing is an attempt to figure out how to deal with this issue that continues to appear to be a liability for Republicans.
Sure does. And it would be no surprise that I actually agree with Tony. Know him very well.
Is that realistic, though, to get off of the issue of abortion?
Well, we need to talk about women's health care. And we need to change the abortion to women's health care. And we need to address that. And as Republicans, until we do that, we're going to see what's going on in Wisconsin and some other places. I have great faith we will. We will pivot and we'll start talking about it.
Nicholas, what are your sources telling you? I mean, clearly Republicans are scrambling to try to figure out how to message this moment. You hear what Sarah says. You hear what Congressman Gonzalez just said. Is this realistic that people are going to start to try to shift the conversation in that way?
And they're not going to mention to you that some of the red states have decided to codify Roe v. Wade to protect a woman's right to choose in their state, like Kansas, for example. They're not going to tell you that, because if they tell you that, then that lets the American people know. Because a lot of people, I've talked about ballot initiatives a lot, and I still talk about it, but a lot of the American people aren't aware of it. A lot of the American people don't even go to vote, so they don't even see these ballot initiatives, right? So they're not going to mention that. If they mention that, then that says to people, oh, wait a minute, we could actually have direct democracy and fight for these issues in our own states. What the hell am I dependent on the federal government for and waiting for them to try to do something? You mean I can organize with people in my own state and get these things accomplished and get these things passed? They don't want you to know about that.
Thing that Republicans have been trying to do for some time, right? Trying to pivot away towards the economy or any other set of issues. But Democrats saw this as a very potent line of attack in the last midterm elections. And as my colleague and I reported today, they're preparing to continue to make this an issue into this week, right? House Democrats and Senate Democrats are prepping an amicus brief to file in this appeals court, which is going to move really fast. And so as a result, this is going to be a live issue. So as much as I think Republicans might try to pivot away from this, it's going to be something that will continue to loom over this next election.
And that will be something that will help the Democratic Party. And they know that, and they're holding on to that piece, and they're holding on to that student loan debt cancellation piece too. Like, I don't believe any of this is coincidence. I believe it's all on purpose. Now let's bring in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his role in all of this. Now that it is announced that he will also primary challenge Joe Biden. You need to know where RFK Jr. stands on some issues. I think a lot of us already know where he stands when it comes to the mandates. He's talked about this on Jimmy Dore. He's talked about it on Kim Iverson's show as well. But I want to show you where he stands in reference to the wars and the military-industrial complex. Now, here's an interview here that he had with Megyn Kelly. And he points out the fact that his son, oh, this is a little fuzzy. Oh, that's just the quality of the video. He points out the fact that his son actually participated in the war between Russia and Ukraine. He's going to give his opinion about that. He's going to tell you where he feels or how he feels, where he fits in all of this. One thing you have to know, I think sometimes people see the Kennedys as like this monolith. I live in Massachusetts. They are very well loved here. Robert F. Kennedy, from what I've seen, what I've heard from people in Massachusetts, they kind of see him as like the black sheep of the family, so to speak. His opinions are a little bit different. I don't agree with all of his political positions, but I want you to hear what he says here in reference to the war machine.
There's differences in my family, but we talk to each other about it, and I send him articles, where I disagree. And here's the bottom line for me. I think we have a military-industrial complex in this country that feeds on continual war, that they want continual state of war. I believe that it is very, very difficult. And this is what Madison and Adams said. Adams specifically said, America can support democracy abroad, but we will not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. And why is that? Because an imperialism abroad is inconsistent with democracy at home.
That piece right there, I think, is important. Imperialism abroad is inconsistent with democracy at home. Hold on to that piece.
Will turn America into a national security state, into an authoritarian state, if we continue to be, our biggest industry be the military. Dwight Eisenhower on January 17th in 1961, just before he left office and handed it over to my uncle, made the best, probably the most important speech in American history, warning America against the rise of the military-industrial complex and talking about how it would subdue and destroy American democracy. And, listen, we go out from war to war to war, and each war is preceded by a propaganda barrage. And then the press all jumps on. And here the same thing happened during the Iraq War, which was the worst foreign policy choice that we ever made until COVID-19 came along.
Let's pause here. So obviously he's against the wars, and he definitely gets it when we talk about the military industrial complex and their goal to have these never ending wars, or you end a war and then you start another one. All right. Look at the way that Joe Biden pulled some of the troops out of Afghanistan and then started drone strikes in Somalia. In one thing, start another thing. And that is to support companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. That's just the reality of it. There's profit to be made when we talk about war. There's no profit with peace. There just isn't. So that's what a lot of times this boils down to. So he definitely gets that piece. Now let's compare the three. When you have RFK Jr., who's apparently obviously anti-war, you have Marianne Williamson, who she's changing her position a little bit in reference to foreign policy, but she still supports the idea of giving Ukraine the weapons and things that they need to fight. So I've never heard her say she's anti-war. So to me, there's a big difference. Either you're anti-war, you're not anti-war. And if you don't tell me that you're anti-war, I'm not going to make that assumption that you are. And then you have Joe Biden, who's a warmonger. So this is why I say someone like RFK Jr. can actually appeal to people on different sides of the political spectrum. He can get some of those independent voters who are anti-war and don't like the government agencies that are against the FBI or the CIA, the security state. He can pull some of those voters. He can pull some of the Republicans, hell, to be honest, if he want to talk about getting rid of this war. He can pull some of the libertarian voters who are also anti-war. Marianne, when it comes to those particular issues, I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening. Joe Biden, I don't see that happening either. So this is why I say I wish he is running, but I wish he would run as an independent and not through the Democratic Party, because I think he can appeal to different sides of the aisle. And I think that is actually going to be the biggest threat. Not someone whose foreign policy is somewhat in line with Joe Biden's. That's not a big threat. You are a big threat when you are the opposing side. He's running through the same parties, which is why I say he shouldn't do this. But when you are the one that's saying, no, we're going to end these wars. No. The FBI and the CIA should not be in our homes. They should not be in our lives. We should have privacy. That's how you become, I guess I would say, I don't want to say a serious candidate, but that's how you become a threat. That's how you become a threat. When you call out the deep state, when you call out the government agencies, when you call out the corruption and the greed with these wars, that is a deep threat. And if you're not willing to call them out, if you can't call out these wars, if you can't call out the corruption, if you can't call out these issues with the FBI and the CIA, if you cannot call those things out, if you cannot call out the fact how this country has slowly overnight become more of an authoritarian state in our lives and trying to tell us what we can and cannot do in our own homes, at our own jobs, if you can't call that out, you are not a threat to Joe Biden. Let's go on.
In American history, and the New York Times had to apologize for its reporting with Judith Miller, and all of the neocon and CIA people who were tricked us into that war. President George Bush said the worst mistake of his presidency was believing George Tenet, the head of the CIA, when he said the weapons of mass destruction is a slam dunk. He said he was tricked by the CIA into that war.
There you
So
go.
if you look what's happened in the Ukraine, there was a CIA-sponsored coup in 2014, and the RAND Corporation, now we know, had published this blueprint that says we should our strategy, our global strategy should be to provoke Putin into overextending himself, and then confronting him in one of these countries, these former Soviet states. And Putin is a gangster. He's homicidal. He's a thug. He's one of the worst people alive today. But we need to have a real debate about how this war, about our part in the whole thing, and what the part the CIA played in it, and what part the extension of NATO. When Gorbachev went to President Bush and said to President Bush, "I'm going to dismantle the Soviet Union. But I want your assurance. I want America's promise to me that you will not move NATO into the former Soviet satellite states as we."
This is after the fall of the Berlin Wall, for those who are wondering.
As they come off, we don't want to be surrounded by a hostile NATO. And Bush promised him, we will not, on behalf of the American people, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And since then, we've moved NATO into, I think, 13 countries that we promised we wouldn't do. We've installed missile systems in each one of them that can be converted literally overnight into nuclear missile systems now. And then you have a government in the Ukraine that has killed between 13,000 and 14,000 ethnic Russians in the eastern part of the government that we helped install. And you had a neocon, Victoria Nuland, selecting the cabinet in 2014.
This is the piece I think that Marianne is missing. This is the piece. It's obvious, like this is a topic, like for him, in reference to foreign policy and these wars, that he seems to be very knowledgeable about. And I think this is why I'm saying I think that someone like him can appeal to people on different sides of the aisle. And that's why I think he should run as an independent. Like, no, I know it's not easy. I know it's more difficult, but he is very well known. It's not like people don't know who the Kennedys are. And that's what I've said before. If someone is going to run for president as an independent or a third party candidate, it needs to be someone who is well known. And that's why I said that's what I think he should do.
We help install this government. And then, then they start treating their ethnic Russians like redheaded stepchildren. And now we're now in a war. They got in a war with them where they're killing 13 to 14,000 ethnic Russians in the eastern part of Ukraine. Now, in 1962, when the Russians moved nuclear missiles into Cuba, we had on the XCOM committee, we had, I think, 11 of the people on that committee who said we should bomb them, even nuclear bomb them. And my Uncle Jack said, what if that means nuclear war with the Russians? And they said, well, they won't do it. We got to do it. We got to invade Cuba. So, they were 90 miles from us, and they were, I think, 1,400 miles from Washington. But we have missile emplacements now that are a few miles from the Russian border.
For the younger people in the chat, he's referring to the Bay of Pigs, and his uncle Jack, he's referring to JFK. So for those who are not familiar, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is Bobby Kennedy's son. So just wanted to connect the dots there for some of you just joining, like, what? Who's Jack and what's he talking about? That kind of thing.
So, and if the Russians moved nuclear missiles into Mexico or missile systems of any kind, and they killed 14,000 American expatriates in Guadalajara and Baja, we would be in there overnight. So, you know, and I'm not, listen, what my uncle said about foreign policy is you always put yourself in the other guy's shoes. And you always figure out, right out, give them a way out. And nobody's talking about any way to settle this. You know, what they're talking about and what Biden's talking about is regime change. Yep. And that's what the CIA wants, regime change in Russia. And that's insane. It's going to get us the same place as regime change did in Iraq, where the situation just gets worse.
So he understands that too. And this is another piece. You guys, your comments in the your comments in the chat is funny. Thoughtless Animal said he's too crazy to be president. Well, we have Biden right now, so I don't know. You guys are cracking me up. Danny said his grandfather was a bootlegger, smuggler, gangster also. Man. I'm not reading all of these. You guys are, oh man, you guys are bad. Let me let this finish. But the regime change wars, yes. What do we say about the regime change wars? That the people in that country usually end up being worse off than they were before the U.S. came in and overthrew those leaders, right? The one I always point to is Saddam Hussein, right? Saddam Hussein, what happened? The U.S. government came in, they took him out, overthrew him, and that actually gave rise to ISIS. Some people don't realize that, but that's what happened. Saddam Hussein was a brutal dictator. We're not here to prop up Saddam. We're not saying he was great. He was not. That being said, one of the things he was able to do was to keep those organizations from forming. He was able to keep that under control. And the moment they came in and they took him out, that gave rise to ISIS. This is why we should not have a hand in overthrowing any other country's government. Just imagine how you would feel. Imagine if, like, Germany propped up one day and said, all right, Biden's out. We're going to put this person in as president and you guys have a nice day. Actually, you guys are probably like that. Actually, you guys are probably like that if someone came in and said, okay, Biden's got to go, put someone else in. But you get where I'm coming from. It's another country making that decision for a country where they don't even, I mean, our government doesn't live in that country at all. And then the people who are left in that country are left there to deal with the devastating effects. That's the problem with these regime changes and these regime change wars. And you brought up a great example, Deneen. Libya is a great example.
So I don't think, you know, listen, those are my arguments today, Megan. As of now, it's not something I'm wedded to. These are really kind of anxieties I have about this war and you know, the reasons this war troubles me, but I listen to other people. And, you know, I can, and I had a CIA guy on my podcast who made a really strong case, you know, for intervention. My son, who knows all the things that I am troubled about this, and he's troubled by them too. He's not naive. He understands, you know, the Ukrainian government is as corrupt as the Russian government. And they're intolerant of civil rights. And then you have all these, you know, really neo-Nazis and the Azov Battalion, et cetera. And Connor's aware of that. Connor saw none of those Nazis when he was over there. The people he worked with, and when I hear him talk about it and the feelings that he has about the Ukrainian people, you know, it makes you want to cry. And he's very articulate and very convincing about it. So I'm lucky that I don't have to now I'm not in a position to make a decision about where you go next, because I think it's really complicated. All wars are. But I think we ought to be talking about these things. And the concerns that I raise, we need to have an open debate about them. Because, when you're taking $50 billion that could be over here paying off student debt and restoring our middle class. But
isn't that what we've been complaining about, guys? All the billions of dollars going over there. We could be using money to pay off student debt or give people health care in this country.
We're paying for that. And I can tell you, people are paying for it at the pump.
Yeah,
we're paying $6 or $7 a gallon. And that is the cost of the Ukrainian war that you as an individual are paying every single day.
We're also paying for it in the grocery stores as well. So, yes, very well said. Again, I don't agree with him on every political issue, but I think when it comes to the anti-war piece, and I think also when it comes to where these billions of dollars are going, giving people healthcare, canceling student loan debt, I agree with him on that. Now, there's exciting, what I consider to be exciting news about RFK. This was announced. News: former congressman and former Democratic presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich is now advising Robert F. Kennedy Jr. When contacted Friday by CBS News, Kucinich acknowledged he is advising him, but said beyond that, the campaign will have more to say in the coming days. So I am going to keep my ear peeled for that, because that's huge. Because now you have somebody who was already inside of Congress, who was a part of the Democratic Party. He knows how it works. He's been pushed out by his own party. So imagine getting that person to help you. That's huge. That is huge. Jonathan said, oh, shit. I'm trying not to look at the comments because the comments are wild right now. The comments are wild. But that is, I think that's huge. That is a big deal there. So we'll keep our eye out for it. We'll keep our eye out for it. Let's go to the poll results. I did ask you guys, would you vote for RFK Jr. for president? 888 votes. Watch the number change. I'm gonna laugh at the number changes. Okay. Geez, what a mixed bag this is. This is different from how it was earlier. 17% of you said yes if he runs as a Democrat. 45% of you said yes only if independent or third party. 14% of you said no for Dem, Indy, or third party. And 23% of you said, dude, I have no idea. Okay. So, and I don't know if you can change your thing after you've already done it. I don't think you can actually on these polls. But I hope someone takes a screenshot of this and maybe send this to RF, blah, 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 blah. Take a screenshot of this and send this to RFA. Jesus, why am I saying RFA? RFK Jr. and show this to him. Oh, the numbers are changing. Oh, it's 46% now. That the majority of you said yes if he runs as an independent or third party. Interesting. Dun, dun, dun.